Hey everyone, it's Niki Shelton and Kerri Selby, and we are keeping it real.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Kerri?
It's a blustery day here in Washington, I gotta tell you. It's raining and sideways wind with rain. It's pretty bad out there.
I was just talking to you about this, and I was telling you, I said, on Monday I was out for a walk with my dog and my daughter, and she's in shorts, and it was about 77 degrees here. I mean, it's just this beautiful day. I mean, it's been hitting like 50s and 60s, but I mean, it was like 77. It was gorgeous outside. And then it was fine. We went to bed. We woke up the next morning and it got a little bit colder and a little bit colder. And the next thing I know, we were having a full on blizzard. I mean, the winds were blowing, the snow was blowing sideways. It was crazy. It was coming down heavy. It was accumulating on the ground, and it got down to negative 10 degrees with a wind chill. So it went from almost an 80-degree to a negative 10. It was insane. So
Mother
it's
Nature is a little crazy.
But you know what I don't miss though is I was telling somebody, I still like it better here. I mean, I like the weather here better because of the fact that it's like today it's colder. I mean, it's only like 30. It's sunny though. And so it makes you happy.
Yes.
I said, whereas in Washington, it's like this dark gray all the time. It's just, it's a different kind of cold and wetness. And anyway, so
And
it's
you would not
interesting.
love today.
No, and
I'm wet.
and see, days like that, I'm really kind of happy I'm here. So I'm just, I'm kind
Right.
of going back and forth. So anyway, how's the rates doing this week? Are we seeing any improvements?
No, actually, we saw a little bit of backwards motion again. So
Darn
we had a
it.
few alerts to lock because things are not going the way that we anticipated. But I did watch a video yesterday. Well, it was actually a live feed about what the forecast is. And this particular gentleman said that he's thinking that in the fourth quarter is when we're going to start to see things drop. So we've had all these hopes that in the first quarter we start to see things decline. And we did for just a minute. Then things started to go up again. We're kind of sitting around the same amount, though. It's not really vacillating too far up, but it's enough to make a difference in your payment.
Yeah. Okay. So we're kind of talking about payments a little bit today. We're talking about what you're going to be able to afford and what factors determine what you can afford in a house. So we're going to kind of jump into that a little bit. I mean, it's like, you're like, okay, I think it's time. I've been working my job and I'm doing this and I want to buy a house and like, what kind of things do we look at or what I should say, do you look at when you get the pre-approval? I mean, like what kinds of things are you looking at, to tell people what they can afford to buy a house or how much?
A couple of key questions that I start out with is what are your home buying goals? What are they looking for? How much affordability is it? Like, tell me what your max payment is because that's really my starting point. But then we're also going to talk about savings. What have you done to put money away? Because there's certain things that are going to be paid for outside the loan. And then you'll have to pay for down payment and closing costs depending on which program you're looking at.
Absolutely. And when I'm working with buyers and stuff too, and like before I even tell them to go talk to a lender, I mean, I'm talking to them and kind of saying, and they're like, okay, we want to buy. And I'm like, okay, have you been pre-approved? That's always the first question. Have you been pre-approved? Because you can't buy a house unless you're pre-approved. So that's the first step. But it's when I'm talking to my buyers though, I'm like, you know what, you need to have these conversations with your lender. And if your lender's not having these conversations, you need to probably get a different lender. And I know you're really good about that. And that's why I love sending them to you because you take the time and it's like, I mean, a lot of people can get a lot of credit, but do you really? I think I read 28 to like 31% is kind of where you want your money to be tied up as far as your monthly for your mortgage. You want other money to be able to do other things. You don't want to just go, oh, yeah, I guess at home in my house again this weekend because I can't afford to do anything else because my house payment's so big. I don't like it very much right now because she sold me this really expensive house that I really, I didn't want to do. And now all my money's tied up and then I can't go on vacation with my friend this weekend or, I mean, but those are some serious things. You need to look at your lifestyle a little bit and what does that look like for you? I mean, if you are a homebody and stuff, maybe you do want to spend a little bit more. I mean, if that's you're going to do, if you're going to be doing like gardening and stuff and you're just like to be home and playing in the yard with your dogs and gardening and you really don't like to go out and talk to people, that's okay. Then maybe I want to go a little bit higher, but you have to know what your goals and what your lifestyle is like and kind of where does that work out, right?
Most definitely. And what you were talking about, having your house payment be a certain percentage of your income, that is extremely right. There are two ratios that we use to determine your eligibility for a loan. And the front end, what we call the front end, is your housing ratio. So we are wanting to keep it between 28 and 30% of your gross income. And I always like to point out it's your gross income before taxes are taken out. So you're not really living off of everything you actually make. You're living off of what is made after taxes. So that's why for me, affordability is the key.
Right. Okay. So again, talk to your lender. And even though they say, oh, you can make sure that that payment looks right and it makes sense for you, right? Okay.
Most definitely.
And then you said savings. That's a huge thing too, because there's a lot of costs that people don't understand that are associated when you come to buy a house. And we talked in our previous, and again, if you haven't subscribed and stuff like that, make sure you go back and do it, because there's some really great information on the different loans and stuff like that. But depending on the type of loan you're in, you may have to bring between, well, depending on, sometimes it's zero, but a lot of times, if for FHA and conventional stuff, it's 3 to 20%, depending on where you're at and what kind of loan to value ratios. Did I say that right? Yes, right?
You
Okay.
did. Look at you using mortgage terms.
My tongue was twisted. I want to make sure I said that right. But you have to make sure that you have a savings, because there are costs. I mean, there's the down payment cost, then you have your closing costs, and again, most people don't understand. Seller pays their side of closing costs, buyer pays their side of the closing costs. So there are closing costs. Can you have your broker work that into the deal? Absolutely, you can do that. Hopefully, if the seller agrees to that. But you know what? It makes you stronger sometimes to have that cash on hand, just in case they won't accept it, and you really, really want that house, that you've got some money there to pay for those closing costs. So closing costs are another, and those are about 2.5%, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower, but usually about 2.5%. And then now we have buyer broker fees. I mean, sometimes the seller will pay, sometimes the seller won't. And do you have that, or do you have a plan for that if it's not covered? So, again, and that's a factor depending on your broker, but you really have to have some money and savings to do this. So definitely save first. Then when you're ready and you think you have enough savings, then go talk to a real estate person. And then they will say, hey, go talk to a couple lenders. And again, I always recommend Kerri, because like I said, she takes the time to talk to you and to make sure you fully understand, and she explains everything, and make sure that she's, not trying to get you in something that you can't afford and that you're going to hate as both on later, right?
Most definitely. And it's interesting to me. I met a couple at an open house 2 weekends ago, and they came in, we were talking about the house, and they'd already talked to a lender and been told what they were pre-approved of, and this lender was really steering them towards one product. Well, I let them know, because they didn't have a lot in savings, about our down payment assistance program in the state of Washington. So they reached out to me, and we had a conversation the following weekend, and I said, did your lender talk to you about this? And about this. No, to answer to all of those questions. So to me, it was very interesting that they were being steered towards one particular product. They weren't being told about down payment assistance, and they didn't even know about some of the fees outside the loan, which is very important to know. You want a home inspection. You want to make sure that you have a sure foundation, that the window sills are good, there's earthquake straps, all of these things. And that is how much do you say average? I tell them $500.
Yeah, it's about between 5 and 6 probably now. And another thing I always say with the home inspections, and I'm going to keep that quick, but pest inspections included, especially in Washington, because it's just so wet and damp. I mean, there's just bugs, and there's rodents and stuff like that, and they do lots of damages. So it is one place you don't want to skip. You really want to make sure that you get somebody there who's knowledgeable and is going to make sure that they're doing a great job for you.
Yes.
So there's other costs too, though. I mean, those are kind of the basic costs. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull up the slide that you created, such a beautiful slide for us today. So I'm going to pull that up. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other costs that you need to be aware of and kind of plan for and know about, and maybe do some research on even prior. Definitely, like the home inspection is one thing. We have homeowners insurance, right? Actually, yes. I skipped ahead. There's property taxes. Sorry.
Yes.
So I mean, and they keep going up, and I mean, definitely in Kitsap County, I mean, they went up so much. And I know, like, if you're on a fixed income, that can be really, really hard to stomach sometime, because they go up quite a bit, and $100 might, especially if a person's really on a fixed income and stuff, that can make a huge difference to them. So
It really can. It really can.
yeah.
So a couple of things. Yeah, we could go ahead with the slideshow and just kind of dive into it then.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to discuss property taxes and homeowners insurance and home maintenance. These are all really important things, and you need a budget for them. And it's important. We'll talk about why.
Yeah, so you have to really understand your property taxes. Every home is going to have property taxes, and there's reasons why. It's going to support your local government. It's going to make sure that there's road maintenance, pays for the fire department, the police department, the schools. So everything is typically based on the value of the land and the home combined. It doesn't usually go up to the same amount that the home appraises for, which is good for you guys because you don't want it to be valued higher. You want it to be valued what the county values it at. And they do these calculations and then they come up with a rate, and it's called a mill levy rate. So it's essentially a percentage, and you multiply the value of the house times that percentage, and that is how you get your property taxes. So it's important to budget for those. We are an escrow state in the state of Washington, and you can choose to waive those. Most lenders will put a higher, they'll kind of hit you on the rate for it because it is a higher risk to not have you pay those things. If you don't pay your property taxes and homeowners insurance, it can put a lien on your home. So we don't want that to happen. You become a higher risk. So it is kind of good to have it calculated into your monthly mortgage payments. That way you're not worried about putting the money to the side every month. Because
you don't have to remember it, or oops, forgot. You don't have to do one of those. It's just like it's done.
Exactly, because they're due during the fiscal year, April and October. So you have to pay 6 months at a time, and that could be $1,500 to $2,000. So
yep, it can get
depending on where you live, could be more.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. And then we have our homeowners insurance coverage. So are you just assigned somebody, or can you shop around?
You can absolutely shop around. I do give recommendations if you need them. I find that brokers are real great to talk to because they can compare rates with multiple companies. So you're not just stuck with one. But generally, the first step is to speak to who you have your car insurance through. They will often give you a bundle and give you discounts on insuring your home and car together with them. So ask those questions.
Yep, definitely. Make sure you check it out. And then, and some homes have more issues as far as, I mean, like if they're older homes, that they're higher insurance, there's different, I mean, like, if you've got like the knob and tube wiring, I know that can increase the insurance on the home. So there's different things that can add that I can't talk, make that become more expensive. So, there's a lot of things to think about when you are shopping for a home, and kind of to keep, again, some of it, like the saving and the taxes, you can't really do a lot about, but knowing it and knowing what that amount is before you go out. But the other stuff is really important to make sure that you're kind of having that in the least of the back burner, and you're checking it out and thinking that while you're walking through these homes.
Yes, and homeowners insurance does cover you against certain hazards and liabilities that can occur, but it doesn't cover everything. So just make sure that you talk to your agent about what it covers, what you want your deductibles to be, because once again, the insurance is covered in your mortgage payment. We collect 1 full year upfront plus an additional 2 months to start your escrow account. So that will be counted, but if something were to happen and you make a claim, you will have to have money for the deductible.
Yep. So there's always these things to keep thinking about. And, when you're a first time home buyer, sometimes you just don't know the stuff, and it's only with experience that you kind of get it. So, again, take notes when you're watching these guys and hold those, because when you're starting to shop, those are some things to keep in mind. Okay. And then home maintenance costs. So I'm out, we're looking at a place, and there's something wrong. I mean, like we do the home inspection, let's say, and, there's something that comes up, oh, I can fix it later. Right?
Sure you will.
Oh, I'm not sure.
later.
Maybe I'm not sure exactly what happened. There's some water damage, but we don't know exactly. Those are some. That's why you really, really want an insurance or an inspector out there, not insurance, but an inspector out there to kind of really look at everything and give you, and people go, oh my God, I did. There's so much things. Actually, you want them to find all those things. That is the best thing a home inspector can do for you is find everything that they can possibly see almost to put on that list. Because then you know what you're dealing with, and like, oh, you know what, in 10 years I need to put a new roof on, or you know what, I need to fix the plumbing in this house because it's got like the older plumbing and I need to put some different tubes on or whatever, knobs on, whatever they're called, and make that so it doesn't leak and so it doesn't cause other issues.
Exactly. And there's always going to be maintenance. That's the one difference between renting a home and owning a home is you can't call the landlord when something goes wrong. It's going to be your financial responsibility. So, we had within the first, I would say 6 months of us buying our house that we found there was a leak in the upstairs bathroom to the downstairs. The dishwasher went out, the microwave went out, and then the refrigerator went out. So all of those were now things. We used to live in base housing. So for us, we would just call base housing and say, hey, this is broken. Nope, not anymore. We're responsible for paying for that now. So just keep those things in mind. And it's always good to have an emergency fund just for those reasons, because some things can be held off, like painting or, redoing flooring. But the emergency things like burst pipes, if your refrigerator goes out, you certainly need a place to store your food. So you don't always have the credit to put it on. So it's good to have some money put to the side for emergencies like that.
So those are some things you just don't think about sometimes when you're out shopping. And, I know when we were shopping, it was kind of like when I remember walking through the house the very first time, it's like, oh, okay, this is the house. I found the house. Okay, I want to get rid of the wallpaper that was in there because it's from the 70s and it's got this flowered wallpaper that was like, oh, good God, why would somebody do that? I want to paint it this color. I want to, and those were the fun things. But if you walk into a house and it's like all of a sudden all you're doing is just fixing stuff that no one's ever going to appreciate because you don't see it's behind the scenes, it's not as much fun either, right?
Right. You're like, oh, I spent money and nobody's even going to know.
I know, right? Let's maybe get some new windows. Those are really good and energy efficient. So,
oh, yes.
So conclusion. So budgeting for all this stuff and knowing and being educated about it is probably some of the most important things that you can do. So just, really, do your research. Make sure you're checking out your, for the insurance. Do some research. Find, whether it's like you said, with the budget or with combining it with your car and your house payment, that's usually the cheapest way to do that. So talk to your auto insurance carrier and talk to them and see if they have something like that for you. And, if not, then maybe it's time to look at a different thing that will do that. And right.
And there's all kinds of websites that can help you create a budget too, because there are going to be those unexpected things. It's really great to have your own budget done because some places include the utilities with and the trash along with the payment. So just factor in those things too and really be aware of all of the costs of owning a home. The great thing is owning a home creates appreciation, and you will eventually have lots of equity in your home especially as you pay down the mortgage balance. So it's always a good investment. Don't want to discourage anybody from that, but just it's great to be prepared for what some of those costs could potentially be.
Absolutely. And, we didn't talk about HOAs too much. I think you mentioned briefly, but, that is another cost that could be a monthly cost or it could be a yearly cost or whatever, but it's something that, again, you might want to have it just automatically taken out. I don't know how that affects the mortgage side on that. Like, like you were saying, the other side did, but
we can include it in the mortgage payment as well.
Okay.
Yep. Which is really helpful.
Right. Because then you don't get upside down and have to pay it and go, oh my God, I don't have it, whatever, because that would be a problem. So it's good to have. So anyway, I think that's all we have for today, right?
Yes. Lots of information.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe, follow, or like button. And also send us some feedback. We'd love to hear what you want to hear more about, what you don't, and keep watching. And we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.